The sun had just set behind the thick pines that surrounded Willow's Creek, leaving the sky a faded purple. The locals knew better than to venture near the bog after dark. It was a quiet, eerie place with a reputation for strange disappearances. But for the teenagers of Willow's Creek, the stories were nothing more than old legends, ghost stories told around campfires. That's how it all started. It was the last week of summer, and a group of 5 friends decided they needed one last thrill before the start of school. Nate, the unofficial leader of the group, proposed the ultimate challenge, a trek through Willow's bog at night. Come on, what's the worst that could happen? Nate grinned as he shined his flashlight at his friends. Everyone knows it's haunted. Sarah, the skeptic of the group, rolled her eyes. But fine, I'm in. Prove to me there's no such thing as monsters. The others hesitated. Ben, the quiet one, Kim, who'd heard the most about the bog's strange occurrences, and Jake, Nate's younger brother who always tried to keep up. Peer pressure had a way of getting to them, and soon they found themselves hiking towards the marshy waters, led only by the pale beams of their flashlights. As they approached the entrance to the bog, the air grew thick with moisture. The towering trees on the edge leaned in, their branches swaying as though whispering warnings to each other. Kim shuddered. You know, my grandma used to say the bog wasn't always here. Something made it grow. Something unnatural, Kim said softly. Yeah, like what? Ben muttered nervously. They called it the Watcher, a creature that rises from the swamp every few years, hungry for something, she whispered. No one ever found out what. The group laughed nervously, shaking off the tension, but as they stepped into the bog, the laughter died in their throats. The thick mud sucked at their shoes, and strange noises echoed in the distance. Croaks, snaps, and something else, something heavy moving through the trees. After a while, the group found a clearing in the middle of the bog. The ground was firm here, a perfect place to gather their courage before heading deeper. Nate was about to crack a joke when Jake suddenly went pale. Did you see that? Jake's voice was barely above a whisper. Everyone froze. What? Nate asked, turning to his brother. Jake pointed toward the water, his hand shaking. Something moved out there. They all stared at the dark, still water. The moonlight barely lit the surface, but there was nothing to see, at least not at first. Then it happened again. A ripple, just a small one, as if something was just beneath the surface, waiting. Suddenly, a loud splash erupted from the water. A dark shape lunged from the bog and vanished just as quickly beneath the surface, sending waves rippling towards the shore. What the hell was that? Sarah shouted, backing away. Stay calm, Nate ordered, but his voice cracked with fear. Kim stumbled, falling into the mud, and when she tried to push herself up, her hand touched something cold and slimy. She looked down and screamed. She was gripping a strange, fleshy root, but as she yanked her hand away, the root recoiled and slithered back into the water. It's alive, she gasped. Before anyone could react, the ground beneath them began to tremble. The water surged up, bubbling violently. Something enormous was coming. Slowly, a figure began to rise from the depths, a creature, taller than the trees, covered in moss and dripping with thick black mud. Its glowing eyes pierced through the night, locking onto the group. It was the Watcher. Ben ran first, stumbling through the trees. The others followed, but the creature was faster. Its long, vine-like arms lashed out, slamming into the ground just inches from Nate, sending mud flying into the air. Go! Go! Nate screamed, grabbing Jake's hand and pulling him up a nearby hill. The others scrambled after them, but the creature's roar echoed across the bog, shaking the ground beneath them. Sarah cried out as her foot got stuck in the mud, and as the creature neared, she could feel its cold, damp breath on her neck. Desperate, she yanked her leg free just in time and bolted toward the others. They all ran until they reached an old cabin at the edge of the bog. The cabin had been abandoned for years, but it was their only refuge. Nate kicked the door open, and they piled inside, slamming the door behind them. The cabin creaked with age, and the wind howled through the cracks in the walls. Inside, it was dark and musty, filled with old, decaying furniture. The group huddled together, their breaths shallow and rapid. What was that thing? Jake whispered. The Watcher, Kim replied, her voice trembling. It feeds on fear, and it doesn't stop until it gets what it wants. Suddenly, the floorboards began to creak. The cabin shook as heavy footsteps echoed outside. The Watcher was circling, waiting. We need to distract it, lead it away from here, Nate said, his voice grim. If we all run in different directions, at least one of us will make it out. No, Kim shook her head. The Watcher hunts those who are separated. We have to stick together. They all exchanged nervous glances, and for a moment there was silence. Then, without warning, the window shattered. The Watcher's arm reached inside, clawing at the air, trying to grab hold of anything it could. In the chaos, Ben grabbed a lantern and smashed it on the ground, igniting a pool of old gasoline that had leaked from a broken canister. Flames erupted, engulfing the cabin in fire. The group rushed out, the heat driving the creature back toward the water. The Watcher let out a deafening roar as it retreated, its body dissolving into the bog, leaving nothing but the bubbling, cursed waters behind. By the time they reached the edge of the bog, the fire had consumed the old cabin. They collapsed on the grass, panting, covered in mud and sweat, but alive. For a moment, they watched the flames flicker in the distance, casting eerie shadows across the bog. "We have to tell someone," Ben finally said. "People need to know." "No one would believe us," Nate replied, shaking his head. "We barely believe it ourselves." Kim stared into the distance, her eyes haunted. "It's not over. The Watcher. It'll come back. It always does." With heavy hearts, they walked back toward town, leaving the bog and its dark secrets behind them. At least, for now. But deep in the murky waters, beneath the still surface of the bog, something stirred. The Watcher was not gone. It was merely waiting for the next time to rise again. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories of the unknown. Leave a comment below. What do you think the Watcher is? And would you dare visit Willow's bog?